The deadlift is the most fundamental key lift in your exercise arsenal, and one of the most underrated ways to do it is something called the Sumo Deadlift. Once you master this is great for people who have long legs, and it might actually be more comfortable for you. You might find that you're stronger on this lift for a variety of reasons. We're going to show you how to do that right now. So the key difference between the Sumo deadlift and other deadlifts is when we're doing that conventional deadlift, we have our hands outside of our legs. Now we're going to move our legs outside of our hands, and this is going to create a couple of advantages. One of the key advantages is we have a lot of freedom, and this is why powerlifters very often go to the Sumo deadlift. You have a lot of freedom to move over a shorter range of motion. We get our legs wider. We don't have to hinge quite as far. You are going to work in different ways on the Sumo deadlift though, because in order to get that leg position, in order to find that width, we have to really contract our glutes in a holding position and maintain that squeeze as we're doing the deadlift. That's why many people consider the Sumo deadlift a really good glute builder, even though the conventional and trap bar deadlifts are going to build your glutes as well. So the key thing with the Sumo deadlift for Brett, he wants to have his feet wide. And what he essentially wants to do, and it takes a couple tries for this, is you want to find a way to get your feet as wide as possible. And when you lower down to the bar, you want your shins to wind up perpendicular to the ground. That's going to allow him to drive through the ground, and he's not going to be able to do that unless his shins are perpendicular to the ground. He walks up to the bar. You want to get nice and close to the bar. That way you can lift up in a straight line. And it's okay if it might actually skin your shins when you're lifting it up. That's going to happen. Wear high socks or wear pants, but you want that bar close to you. He's got his feet wide, and what he's going to do is he's going to think about pushing his butt back, reach down for the bar, pull his hips down toward the bar. When he's in this position, again, you want to check with your shins. See, he's a little wide, so he might want to come in a little bit because you want to be able to apply that force into the ground, and the best way to apply that force into the ground is by having your shins perpendicular to the ground. And now we're going to step through basically your process and your essential setup for the deadlift. Think of this as a checklist. You want to hit all of these marks regardless of whatever deadlift variety you're doing. So again, Brett's gotten nice and close up to the bar. Think about, you want to make sure that you can see your toes on the other side of the bar. Your shins are maybe a ½ an inch away from the bar. Once he's in this position, again, he's going to push his butt back. He's going to squeeze his glutes as well. By squeezing your glutes, and this is key in the Sumo deadlift, it's going to help his knee get open. It's going to help his hip stay in a nice external rotation position, and it's going to help him maintain that vertical shin to the ground. Now he's in this good position. He's grabbing the bar. You want to make sure that your grip is nice and tight. You don't want to have this on your fingers, but you're actively gripping the bar and squeezing it. We want to try to irradiate as much as we can, get as much muscle working to do this lift as possible. And now he's got one more step. He wants to turn the pits of his elbows forward and squeeze his shoulder blades. All of that turns on your back musculature. That's going to help protect your shoulders, protect your biceps tendons as you're doing this deadlift. Once we have all this tension, we have one final step. What Brett's going to do, and this is going to help us get all the tension and really find the position that we want to be in for this deadlift. What Brett's going to do is he's going to do something called pulling the slack out of the bar. Now this is very subtle. Essentially there's that tiny little bit of space, maybe a micrometer, between the plate itself and the bar, and we want to pull that out. We want to pull that space tight, and all that's done is now that's set up all this tension in Brett so that he can accomplish this lift the way he needs to. Now he's all set up to lift the bar. So now Brett is set for the lift, and from here it is simple but nuanced at the same time. The biggest thing is don't lose all of that tension that he's already created. So all he wants to do is from that position, maintaining all that tightness, keeping his hips lower than his shoulders, he's just going to stand up and squeeze his glutes hard. Now, when he lowers back down, we want to be very nuanced about how we lower back down. What we want to do is continue to squeeze through our glutes and think about opening up our knees as we lower. That's going to help him return to that same shins perpendicular to the ground angle where he has the power he needs to lift for his next rep. So let's do another rep, Brett. So think about this. Don't be afraid, especially when you're starting this lift, to let this be very slow and controlled as you lower, and so you can really feel what your glutes are doing, and you can feel what it feels like, so you can understand what it feels like to really continue to open your knees, because that's critical to attacking the sumo deadlift. The one mistake you want to avoid making is you don't want to create all of this tension and then lose it. So very often people are going to drop their arms a little bit and then pull up because they don't trust themselves in the lift. That can work at lighter loads. As you get heavier, you're going to miss the fact that you didn't maintain all of that tension, and you're not going to be able to lift. So get in your good habits now when you have 135, 225 pounds on there. That way you can take those habits in when you're hitting 315, 405, and you're set up to attack 315 and 405 correctly. So make sure you keep that tension there. Other thing you don't want to do, and this is a common problem in deadlifts in general, you're going to see people very often, their butt starts to rise before anything else. This is a huge problem because essentially now you've made your lower back the lever, the driving lever here, and you can't do that. You want to make sure that your hips, that your glutes and your hamstrings are driving this motion, and you do that by every single rep, making sure that your hips are lower than your shoulders and finding that position, finding all that glute tension and that hamstring tension. The last mistake you will see on all barbell deadlifts, and it's something you want to avoid on the sumo, you're going to see people let this weight drift out in front of them. One of the reasons that we set our lats is so that we could then lift in a straight line and our hips are driving the motion. You don't want that weight to get away from you, because again, the farther that weight gets away from you when you lift, the more, again, your back becomes the key lever. That's a risk factor for your back, and that's also not what we're trying to train. So you want to make sure that bar stays close the entire time. That is a sumo deadlift, and that is how you execute it. So that is the sumo deadlift, and once you master it, this is very likely going to be the exercise where you move the most weight. It is not a deadlift that you need to do in every single workout. You want to think about playing with all the different deadlifts at some point in your training cycle and get comfortable with them all. So you can use this for, say, 4 to 5 weeks. Think about doing 4 sets of 6 to 8 reps and moving weight, and don't be afraid to push that weight, and then that's going to feed into a stronger trap bar deadlift. It's going to feed into a stronger conventional deadlift because you're exposing your body to these greater loads that they might not have been able to hit when you were doing the trap bar deadlift and the conventional. So there's a lot of potential here. Get the sumo deadlift in your arsenal and have fun with it.